Let's set the scene. It's February 28th, 2026, and the United States and Israel have just launched a massive, coordinated military offensive against Iran. Now, this wasn't just another regional skirmish. Oh no, this was the opening shot of a full-scale conflict. So, we're going to break down this incredibly planned-out first strike, codenamed Operation Epic Fury. Right from the very first moments, the message was crystal clear. The main goal, as Israeli officials put it, was a decapitation strike. They were aiming directly at the absolute highest level of Iranian leadership. The idea was to make the whole regime collapse from the top down. And they knew exactly where to aim. The missiles were dialed in on a super sensitive area around University Street in Tehran. Now, this isn't just any old neighborhood. It's the absolute nerve center of the Iranian government. It's where you'll find the primary day-to-day offices of the supreme leader himself. So here's the million-dollar question. Did they get him? And this is where things get murky. You know, the fog of war. Iranian military officials came out almost immediately, claiming the supreme leader wasn't even in his office when the missiles hit. But then you have these conflicting reports from Israel saying that, yes, his body had been found, and his death was confirmed. The entire region was just left holding its breath. So how in the world do you pull off an attack on this scale? I mean, hitting multiple, heavily defended cities across a whole country at the exact same moment. Well, it all comes down to this terrifyingly precise military doctrine. It's kind of like a mathematical art of war. It's a tactic called time on target, and the whole concept is pretty wild. You have missiles firing from submarines over here, bombs dropping from stealth jets way up there, and cruise missiles launching from ships out at sea. They're all deployed from totally different places at completely different times. But the goal is to have them all arrive at the exact same instant, creating total systemic shock and just overwhelming the enemy. And this is a perfect illustration of how it works. You've got the USS Abraham Lincoln carrier group hanging out in the Arabian Sea, while Israeli jets are flying somewhere else across the Middle East. Every single trajectory is mathematically choreographed so that the moment those Israeli jets drop their bombs, cruise missiles that were launched minutes or even hours earlier hit their targets in other cities at the same exact second. But here's the thing. Before a single bomb fell, before a single physical munition hit its mark, a totally different kind of war had already kicked off. This was the opening act, and it was fought in the electromagnetic spectrum. It was all about creating a ghost in the machine. So try to imagine you're in an Iranian radar operator. You're just staring at your screen, and all of a sudden you see your worst nightmare, a massive squadron of fighter jets screaming towards the capital. But it was a phantom. What was actually there were hundreds of these tiny miniature air-launched decoys. These brilliant little drones designed to perfectly copy the radar signature of a full-sized fighter jet. And listen, this wasn't just some simple trick. This was a coordinated electronic assault coming from space, from the sea, and from the air. The US and its allies were literally injecting false data directly onto Iranian radar screens. It completely overwhelmed even their best, top-tier defense systems. And all that electronic chaos didn't just confuse the network, it totally dismantled it, carving out these safe, invisible highways for the real stealth fighters like the F-35 and F-22 to just slip right through completely undetected. Okay, so with the enemy effectively blinded, the physical assault could finally begin. The whole operation was structured as a devastating three-wave attack designed to cripple Iran's military capabilities piece by piece. Let's break down the timeline. So it all starts at H-hour with Wave 1. The focus there is on finishing the job of blinding the enemy. Then, 30 minutes later, Wave 2 comes in to go after the really high-value assets. And 2 hours into the whole thing, Wave 3 begins, and that's all about sustaining pressure and hunting down any threats that are left. All right, let's dive into Wave 1. This is them kicking down the door. The attack starts not with jets, but with robotic precision from the sea. You've got Arleigh Burke-class destroyers launching dozens of Tomahawk cruise missiles. These things fly super low, hugging the terrain, they call it nap of the earth, to stay below the radar. And then they slam into the very radar sites and command bunkers that are the eyes and ears of Iran's defense network. Now we move to Wave 2, and you can see how the assault is building. With the path cleared, the silver bullets of the U.S. Air Force are already deep inside hostile airspace. You've got B-2 Spirit stealth bombers striking the most heavily fortified targets, like those deeply buried nuclear bunkers. At the exact same time, F-15E Strike Eagles, which are basically acting as flying bomb trucks, are hunting for mobile targets, like ballistic missile launchers hidden away in valleys. 2 hours past H hour, the U.S. Navy's floating air bases finally enter the fight. FA-18 Super Hornets launch from carriers, and their job is summed up by a pretty intense acronym, DEAD, Destruction of Enemy Air Defenses. They're literally hunting down any surviving radar operators who are foolish enough to turn their systems back on, while the stealthy F-35s push forward to gather intel for the next round of strikes. But this assault was never going to be a one-sided affair. Iran has thousands of ballistic missiles and drones, and its response was immediate, it was powerful, and it was given a name of its own: Operation Truthful Promise 4. And that counterpunch landed hard, right across the region. A massive wave of missiles and drones targeted U.S. and allied bases. The UAE's Al Dhafra Air Base was hit. The U.S. Navy's 5th Fleet headquarters in Bahrain was targeted directly. And all across Israel, nationwide sirens were blaring as defense systems just lit up the skies over Tel Aviv and Jerusalem, trying to intercept all the incoming attacks. So by sunrise, the first phase of this war was over. The attackers had blinded Iran's air defenses and hammered its most vital military sites. But Iran's counterpunch proved they were far from out of the fight. The initial, perfectly calculated strike had just unleashed total chaos. So with the first shots fired and the entire region on fire, what happens next?